Alright, so if you ever wanted to buy a cheap desk from IKEA, you'd probably go for the Lunmount desk series. Of course, you have to buy legs for them, which means you have three main options. You have the regular $6 legs, which are pretty good, they get the job done, and they got a little adjustability on the bottom. They are the standard height for your computer desk. These things have actually got multiple revisions. I have the older model right there, and the newer model right here. Your next option would have to be the OLOV if you want to do any adjustability on the cheap. You can go lower than these ones, and you can go much higher for a standing experience. And these things are about $15. And I believe, to my knowledge, these things have never got a revision, but the next step up would have to be the GERTONS. The GERTONS, I'm pretty sure they had the same issue, but I've only experienced the older models. But with that being said, although these OLOV legs are pretty affordable and they get the job done, you could get a standing experience or an ultra low one for kids. They are pretty nice legs. Believe it or not, these things have 3 different noise sources, which if you have ever owned one of these things, you probably know what I'm talking about. Now imagine that sound times 4, because I've already fixed 3 of these legs. It's pretty annoying, it's pretty loud, especially if you have nothing on the desk. If your desk has nothing heavy on it like a computer, then it will most likely rattle like crazy and it's going to drive you insane. And by the end of this video, hopefully I've saved a couple lives from, pulling their hair out. So with all that being said, let's just get right into it. First off, flip your table like so you can get easy access to the legs, and once you're done you want to flip it over and do the other side. So again, I've already done the legs here, but that is not the fix here, that is something else. I'll talk about it at the end of the video. It is an optional thing just in case if things don't completely silence themselves. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and unscrew this leg until it feels completely loose, and then you can just go ahead and pull it out and it'll come out like so. Now here is the first noise source. The first one is up top of here. This part rattles around like crazy and it gives you that high-pitched noise, which is pretty annoying. The next part is this part right here. Around this rim inside, this leg will actually start hitting the cylinder on the inside, then you'll get some more noise. And the final one is actually around the bottom, which is this part right here. And again, this time the rod here is whacking itself over and over again, so you have a third noise source. So let's go ahead and fix that. And to fix all 3 noise sources, you'll need a couple things. And in my case, I've used some masking tape, some electrical tape, a pair of scissors, a heat source, and some shrink tube. The shrink tube is optional. If you have it, great. If not, that's not a problem. You can use the electrical tape instead. And for these tapes, you can actually use them interchangeably, and I'll explain why I use one over the other. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is actually rotate this thing until you get some more height on the section, because this section is spring-loaded. So what you want to do next, if you have any electrical tape, you can go ahead and actually wrap this around. But if you have some shrink tube, this might make life slightly easier. So just go ahead and heat it up until you have a kind of a cushion that is made out of rubber. And again, you can use the electrical tape, but I think this is slightly cleaner. Now the next thing you want to do is actually go ahead and unravel this part and wrap around it about 4 to 5 times. And finally, for the third part, you want to grab this little thing and set it aside. Grab your painter's tape, and I recommend the blue one from 3M because it doesn't leave any residue. And you want to go ahead and grab yourself a piece of tape and cut it in half, then stack it, cut it in half again. And basically, you'll want 2 pieces of 3 stacks that will look something like this. And depending on your situation, you might want to add one more, but then you want to tape them on the inside of this part, preferably with nothing sticking out. So it should look a little something like this. Then you want to go ahead and move over and unscrew this part until it's actually loose. Push it all the way, stick your end cap, and make sure it's not wiggling. If it is wiggling, you might want to add one more piece of tape. And finally, set your adjustments and tighten it. And what do you know, I saved you a trip back to IKEA. But at this point, you're probably wondering about these pieces of tape. Well, let me go ahead and actually take them out and see if it makes any difference. Because of course, you probably want some aesthetics. And it really doesn't matter a whole lot. Now, if you really want to, you can actually go ahead and add these pieces of tape around the final cylinder just to mitigate any slight movements. Because unfortunately, these legs are just very noisy, and even after all those fixes, they still have some very faint noises when moved. But that sure beats the noise that these things were making before. Here's a before and after. And before we end this video, I do want to mention that some of these fixes were inspired by this one Russian video. You gotta give credit where credit is due. I'll leave the link for it in the description below. It's a Russian video and he shows what he's done. As you can see, he's using the electrical tape for the top part and the bottom part. And the third fix on the bottom here, we're having the tape on the inside. I've actually done some experimentation. I've done some wraparound. I've done inside out, and the best method was to actually use painter's tape because it doesn't make any of that rattling noise when it actually sticks. Because if you have something that's kind of rubbery, it might actually produce a bit more noise when it's touching back and forth. So painter's tape on this bottom part really helps when it comes to friction, when it comes to longevity, because it doesn't rip like rubber does. And you can easily stack it and stick it in without leaving any residue, which is nice. And yeah, that is all for this video, so thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed it, found it helpful, hit the like button and subscribe and content like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone. Yes, that'll be in the next video.